city does have some brownfield sites that are available, and there are packages in your handouts. There are sheets in your handouts, I think near the end, that describe each of the properties. And what Tara is going to do is walk us through each one of those, and she'll be able to answer questions about them. And then at the end, we can take questions about the whole program.
Given how young I look, I have only been with the city for about 3 years, and 1.5 of those years was working with Brownfields. So in that 1.5 years, I've learned a lot, and in that experience had mainly worked on the management side of our existing brownfields. So pursuing that development and that implementation of the remediation development is still new to me, but I'm certainly willing to work with you, and I have full support of all the staff at the municipality. So if anyone here in the room is interested in talking to me, I'm pleased to do so after the session or through email. And I'll show you the Brownfields website at the end of this as well, so that you can learn more about the properties here in Brantford. All right. So I'm going to share with you the opportunities. It's in the left side of your package. There's about 8 identified properties that are city-owned. It's important to note that these are the properties that the city has bought or either mostly acquired through tax sales. It's not the exhaustive list of the possible brownfield sites or underutilized sites in the city, but I thought that these were the best examples that have the potential for redevelopment. So the first one I actually have is the 2 Drummond / 7 Murray Street property. 2 of the panelists had mentioned it. Maybe I will go through it a bit more as well. So it's got 2 municipal addresses because it fronts onto 2 city streets, which is maybe an appealing factor. It's approximately 4 acres, and the present zoning on it is RC, which is residential conversion, which basically is one of our most flexible residential use zoning. The past uses on the site were a former hydro station, a national cleaners and dyers business, some warehousing, and then more storage and office uses. But the site is currently vacant, and the city in the last 5 years or so did demolish the 2 buildings on the site. So there is a 64-foot frontage off of Murray Street right here. So that is an appealing factor for what Mitch had suggested could be residential townhome uses. And then here, it's not well depicted in this picture, but the canal, the Mohawk Canal, does run along here, and this is the infamous Greenwich Mohawk site. So in the next 10 years, and as the city is moving forward with the demolition of the buildings on Greenwich Street, this area is going to look a lot different than it does now, and perhaps a very nice waterfront neighborhood. Currently, there are no known environmental site assessments for the property, but the city does own it, and with the way that we're proceeding, that the city seems open to pursuing that component of the remediation to facilitate eventual redevelopment. All right. This next site is one of my favorite brownfield sites.
Do you have prices on the apartment?
No, none of these sites have been gone through a real estate appraisal recently, so I can't offer or speak to their value at this time. Yeah, and feel free to interrupt with questions, maybe, if it comes up quickly.
I'm sure they're open to offers.
So why I think this is one of my favorite brownfield sites is that its location. If you're from Brantford, you'll remember. So this is the 166 Greenwich Street site, and maybe you could remember that this used to be the site of the old fire hall in the downtown location. For those who are not familiar with Brantford, the downtown area is located just north of the site, and our downtown is undergoing a significant transition and becoming a emerging post-secondary school economy. Wilfrid Laurier, Nipissing University, and Mohawk College all have campuses located in the heart of downtown. Presently, there are about 4,000 to 5,000 students going to classes, eating out, living and shopping in the neighborhood. And by 2023, Wilfrid Laurier University does project, or in fact aims to increase their student enrollment to 15,000 students by 2023. So as the panelists had suggested, if you're looking at market conditions in the future, this downtown area is going to change, and the needs in this community are going to be much different than they are now. So this firehouse site is just located on the fringe, which that is what its zoning is, fringe core commercial, which is a wide range of retail and office, institutional, as well as, and then with our recent intensification study, we are open to considering more residential or live-work type arrangements in our zoning. And the other things to note about our emerging downtown economy is that the YMCA athletic facility is in talks right now to locate on the south side of Colburn Street. And yep, so that's that site. This next site I kind of put on there, but it's probably not maybe the most attractive in terms of development, but it is a site that is located downtown, so all those factors I had noted about the downtown are relevant to this site. It is definitely a much smaller site, and it's close to the firehouse, so that firehouse site that I just mentioned is here, and this is 27 Newport. I should have actually also had the mapping increased so that it included this portion here, which is also in city ownership. So it used to be a former auto garage. Right now, it's vacant. This is a park, a well-used park in behind. And it's a small site, but potentially maybe has a market for housing, student housing perhaps. Maybe they're less, they're wanting proximity to the downtown, or office commercial, or maybe even the university has, a future need for a small site within the downtown core, and would be amenable to talking about redevelopment of that site. Some of you might be familiar with this site. It's one half of the Sydenham Pearl Brownfield site, which the city, as Dara had mentioned, had just approved moving ahead with completing the recommended remedial options, which is to start with a risk assessment and then pursue various in situ and a little bit of excavation on the site to clean it up, to get an RSC for residential and parkland uses. So yes, the city has pursued up to that point and intends for the site to be redeveloped to either residential or parkland uses. And you can see that it is surrounded by a mature neighborhood to the south. It has a little bit of industrial uses to the east and the west. And it is bound to the north by CN rail line, which does pose some issues, but potentially maybe some opportunities there, especially as Via Rail and potentially maybe GO Transit comes into the city. It could be a prime spot for maybe commuters to consider. So if you want to read the reports that recently were completed of the recommended remedial options completed by CH2M Hill, our consultants, they can be found on the city's website. This is just the other half. The next one is just the other half of the Sydenham Pearl Brownfield site. It's 17 Sydenham, maybe a little less attractive because it is bounded by almost all sides by the residential homes and to the north by some industrial uses. But together with the other side, with 22 Sydenham, maybe there is an opportunity to meet your parkland dedication requirements by working with the other half, maybe providing parking to maybe a condo type development on the other side. So there are still options for both halves, and the city does see them as going together presently, although perhaps someone with creative thinking could see them as separate, because there is access to both of them through Sydenham Street in the middle. And then last but not least is our big brownfield, the one that Brantford is well known for, maybe infamously so. But it is the Greenwich Mohawk site, which is comprised of 3 properties. I've separated them out in your packages as 3 separate properties. I think typically the city sees them as a full site. They have great opportunity as a full site, but also perhaps maybe more creative uses can be found, and perhaps in a separated format. And maybe it's an easier bite to take when it is in a smaller format. But generally, all 3 properties are zoned for industrial, but again, the city does not intend for this site to stay industrial. It's within a fairly mature neighborhood, and the city's intention is for it to be a mixed-use development comprising of residential, commercial, or institutional. And presently, the museum, the Canadian Military Heritage Museum, is still operating successfully on the site in that far western corner. So institutional is a strong component of this site. And as recently mentioned on Tuesday night, council did move ahead in pursuing the demolition of the site. So all the buildings on Greenwich Street will be demolished, and as far as the timekeepers, part of the timekeepers building will be preserved and will serve as sort of a heritage feature on the site, and the rest will be demolished. And the city does have an important piece of $12 million in funding from the federal government, as well as $5 million from the province towards the site. So this is an excellent sort of public-private partnership where the city has funding to contribute to the remediation, and we will be moving forward with that in the next 3 or 4 years. But it is a site that's primed for development, and ready to go. So the last slide, then, I just showed an aerial of these 3 sites together. So for more information on all of these sites, as well as any past reports that we've completed, there's actually a myriad of reports available. Unfortunately, because of the regulations, they're no longer updated and meet the standards, but certainly the information on the past uses and potential contamination on the site is still somewhat applicable and helpful in developing or updating the Phase 1 and Phase 2 reports. So you can find that information at brantford.ca/brownfields, and of course, feel free to contact me. Great. Oh, and all the information on the incentive programs as well is available on the website.
Wow. Thank you very much. Tara isn't going to go very far.